Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to the Monroe Planning Commission regular meeting. It is Monday, July 13th, 2026, and it is 7 p.m. Hannah, can you please do roll call?
I'd be happy to. Commissioners present and establishing a quorum. Commissioners Dawkins, Lockhart, Lowe, Peterson, Walsh, and Wirch.
Thank you. And I do not believe we have anyone signed up for public comment. So we will move on to agenda item 4.1, which is approval of the June 22nd, 2026 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I motion.
Thank you, Nick. Do I have a second? Thank you, Kelsey. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? No? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes, say A. Any opposed? Nope, motion passes unanimously. All right, we will move on to agenda item 5.1, which is a public hearing for the 2025-2026 Comprehensive Plan Amendment Docket. And that's for the future land use map amendments and the 2044 growth reconciliation. All right, we will open the public hearing. And this will be presented by Amy Bright.
Good evening, Commissioners. All right. So tonight I'll be presenting the proposed 2025-2026 Comprehensive Plan Amendments for the public hearing. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is for me to present the Comprehensive Plan Amendments, summarize the analysis supporting the proposed future land use map amendments and the associated comprehensive plan updates, receive public testimony on the proposed amendments, and consider forwarding a recommendation to the Monroe City Council. There is a draft findings of fact and conclusions of law and recommendation to City Council in your packet for you to have reviewed. And then later at the end of this presentation, staff will be requesting that Planning Commission make that recommendation to City Council. A little bit of history. This amendment originated as a city-initiated comprehensive plan amendment application during the 2025-2026 annual amendment cycle. On September 9th of 2025, City Council conducted an annual docket selection hearing and placed this application on the final docket for further review. At that same hearing, Council also docketed a separate amendment request related to the airport property, and as we've discussed before, that application was subsequently withdrawn by the applicant. So as a result, the amendments before you tonight constitute the remaining item on the comp plan docket. So the proposal consists of three primary amendment areas. First is the Davis UGA expansion area. The second is the future land use map correction involving the Smith Brothers property. And the third is mapping corrections involving 2 Park Street properties. In addition to these future land use map amendments, staff is proposing revisions to the comprehensive plan's buildable lands inventory, growth allocation, housing capacity, and associated tables and figures to maintain internal consistency throughout the comp plan and with Snohomish County-wide planning assumptions. The first and largest component of the proposal involves the Davis UGA expansion area. As you know, in 2024, Snohomish County adopted Ordinance 24-031, which expanded the Monroe urban growth area by approximately 23 acres through what was referred to as the MON 2 application. Under the Growth Management Act, counties are responsible for establishing and modifying urban growth area boundaries. Therefore, the UGA expansion itself has already been approved by Snohomish County. The purpose of this amendment is to incorporate that county action into Monroe's comp plan by assigning a future land use designation and updating the city's long-range planning assumptions. The following slides, I'm going to summarize them. All the information is in your packet, and we've gone over them in introduction, but they summarize planning's analyses, which was completed by the city in support of the proposed Residential 1 future land use designation. So during Snohomish County's review of the expansion area, the property, which is indicated in the hatched area on your screen, it was evaluated based on the county 9600 zoning, which generally equates to approximately 4.5 dwelling units per gross acre, excuse me. The city is proposing a Residential 1 future land use designation. Under this framework, our Residential 1 is generally implemented through the R7 zoning district. R7 zoning allows up to 7 dwelling units per acre for detached housing and up to 14 dwelling units per acre for attached housing. So the proposed amendment updates the city's long-range planning assumptions to reflect the city's adopted planning framework rather than the county's previous zoning assumptions. I want to note that the Davis area has already undergone substantial analysis through the pre-annexation zoning process. And during that process, the Planning Commission and City Council evaluated transportation, utility capacity, school enrollment projections, compatibility with surrounding development, and public comments. The Commission recommended and the City Council adopted the pre-annexation zoning of R7 for the property. And Residential 1 future land use designation, which is proposed tonight, is intended to provide the comp plan framework necessary to implement the adopted zoning upon annexation. All right, I'll briefly mention that for school capacity, the city evaluated school capacity, and the school district has found that they have sufficient capacity in the area for additional housing. Moving on to traffic on Chain Lake Road. Traffic impacts were a big concern through public comment, and the city has evaluated our recently adopted 2044 comprehensive plan, which included the transportation plan, which evaluated existing and future transportation conditions. At that time, this area was not included in our UGA, but we were able to use the models that were from our 2044 comprehensive plan to help to bring these numbers in, and then our Public Works Design and Construction Department went through, and they have noted that we have sufficient capacity along Chain Lake Road to support a project going in this area. The same is true for water capacity and also sewer capacity. All right, the second amendment area involves the Smith Brothers property. The property is currently designated general commercial on the future land use map. However, the site is developed with a single-family residence and associated outbuildings and is surrounded by residential development patterns. Staff is proposing to redesignate the property as Residential 2 in order to better align the future land use map with existing site conditions and the surrounding neighborhood context. In addition, Kate spoke with Lance Smith, the property owner, today, just to ensure that this is still the direction they are wanting to go, and he confirmed that. And he is not here tonight, and he supports what the city is presenting. The third amendment area involves 2 properties located on Park Street. These amendments are intended to correct mapping inconsistencies that occurred during prior planning efforts. The proposed amendments adjust the future land use map designations between mixed use and Residential 1 to better align with existing development patterns. Also with current ownership and long-range planning objectives. No changes to the existing development are proposed through these corrections. They are just some mapping corrections. One question raised during our introduction meeting was how these amendments affect long-range planning capacity. This slide summarizes those changes. For the Davis properties, the county's planning assumption was approximately 62 dwelling units and 179 residents. Under the city's proposed residential 1 designation, planning scenarios range from approximately 103 to 122 dwelling units, depending on future housing mix. For the Smith Brothers property, the correction reallocates planned capacity from approximately 16 employees under general commercial designation to approximately 5 to 10 dwelling units under the residential 2 designation. The Park Street corrections are just mapping corrections and don't change the planned housing or employment capacities. In addition to the map amendments, this is the table that we mentioned we are proposing updates to. These include updates to the growth allocation tables, future land use capacity calculations, housing capacity assumptions, and mapping figures that we discussed. All right, so staff finds that the proposed amendments are consistent with the Monroe 2044 Comprehensive Plan. Specifically, the amendments support the land use goals and policies on the screen. Goal 3.1, which is ensuring adequate land capacity exists to accommodate future growth. They are also consistent with policy 3.1.7, which directs the city to designate sufficient land to meet future needs. And finally, it supports goal 3.6 by implementing actions that resulted from coordination between the city and Snohomish County during the county's comprehensive plan update process. All right, so the requested action is on your screen, and I am here if you have any questions. And actually, I have one more slide. Apologies, I went a little quick. I'll move back to the requested action in a moment. I just wanted to remind you of the process and next steps. So tonight, we have the Planning Commission public hearing and recommendation. These amendments were sent to the Department of Commerce, and so they have a 60-day review that ends the end of August, and then it will move to the City Council for a public hearing and final action.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions? No? All right, we will go ahead and move on to the public testimony portion. Hannah, is there anyone online who is looking? Nope. All right, we do not have public testimony, so we will move on and close the public hearing. And do I have a motion?
I move to adopt the finding of fact and conclusions of law as presented or amended, and recommend that the Monroe City Council approve the proposed 2025 through 2026 comprehensive plan amendments, including amendments to the Monroe 2044 Comprehensive Plan, future land use map, updates to the buildable lands inventory, revisions to land use tables 3.2 and 3.3, figures 3.2 and 3.4, housing table 6.8, and associated growth allocation, housing capacity, and employment projections.
Thank you, Carla. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mary, for the second. Are there any comments or questions? No? All right. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Nope, motion carries unanimously. Let me get back to my proper page here. There we go. All right, moving on to old business. Agenda item 6.1 is the critical areas update, and this will be a workshop that Kate will lead us through.
Thank you. So I'm going to call this your homework assignment evening. This is the first time you've seen the entire package, which includes the draft regulations, the critical areas report, which summarizes the changes, how we went through, or how I went through actually, and assessed our critical area regulations against changed information from the scientific world, information available by the state, Washington Department of Commerce. And so tonight was really to give you an overview and an introduction, and I hope to get more in depth with questions from you all and comments at our next meeting. So as I begin, I just want to remind you what's in your packet this evening. It's the critical areas report, and I'm going to walk you through a couple specific pages. The draft regulations themselves, which is chapter 2280. When I started really getting into it, it became clear that it's going to be a full repeal and replace. When I started doing all the red marking, it's too confusing to follow. So I will walk you through the changes. There are no additional changes to the definitions. You've already seen them a couple of times, but that is part of the package as well. We will be needing to make a change to one section of the shoreline management regulations, which is chapter 2282. I've had a couple conversations with Department of Ecology, and I have been directed to I will have to go through the Shoreline Master Program amendment process separate from this, but I want to include it because it is part of this package. It's very specific to a reference for the critical areas. So I just want to have you all see the complete package. This will be followed up with a separate review and approval cycle. And then included is the Department of Commerce checklist, and if it didn't make sense to you, you basically needed to review the column on the right. It asked for a lot of documentation of where we had the citation in the critical areas chapter. So if that wasn't clear, it's that very small column on the right that gives the citations for the specific things that they were asking for. And then finally, the environmental documents, which included the SEPA determination of non-significance and the SEPA checklist. Leave it there for a second. Go back. There we go. Okay. So again, our current code is chapter 2280. And just to give you a history of our code, or actually start with the GMA. So when we do our 10-year update for the Growth Management Act, which was really our updated comprehensive plan that was adopted in December of 2024 for 2044, part of that review is we're also supposed to look at our development regulations. With the critical areas, it has even higher priority in the state's rules, but we were given an additional year to complete the work. Unfortunately, it didn't get done. That was due in December of 2025. So we're here now. And it's one of the requirements to be fully compliant with the Growth Management Act. So with that, we want to get this done as quickly as possible. So the history of Monroe's critical areas, I had to laugh. I was going back through old files, and I wrote the original code back in 2003, so it's been a while. The first round of really significant changes happened between 2015 and 2017, and the focus of that was really the wetlands. The science had changed, and so the city did a lot of work on the wetlands, but really didn't look at any other part of the critical area regulations. That next update actually was off-cycle, but it happened when the city adopted the Unified Development Regulations, where all the land use regulations are now in one chapter. And during that update cycle, the piece that was really changed is the city changed the stream designations from a numbered system to a lettered system. And that was consistent with the Department of Natural Resources. They had an interim rule, and so the city went ahead and made that change in 2019. Next slide. So just as a reminder, the critical areas that are regulated by the state of Washington and by the city of Monroe are wetlands, critical aquifer recharge areas, and this was a new section for the city of Monroe. We have not previously regulated or had established regulations for critical aquifer recharge areas. Frequently flooded areas, that's actually in a different chapter of Monroe's code. It is our flood hazard mitigation, and it's part of the FEMA maps that show where anticipated flooding occurs. Geologically hazardous areas, I actually have already received some comments from the Department of Natural Resources on this chapter. I haven't looked at them yet, but they were kind enough to send those last week. And then, as I've mentioned several times, the biggest change is the streams used to be regulated in a separate chapter. Now they are consolidated within the Fish and Wildlife Habitat Conservation areas, and it's part of the shoreline management zone. So a couple of items I want to direct your attention to in your packets. Just for easy reference, on page 345 of your packet, it's page number 3 of the report. It's a table, and that is your guide to where they used to link up. So both the previous and the current chapters started with authority, they went to purpose, applicability, and then from that part it diverges. And so on the left column, I was explaining how it used to be maps and inventories. That whole section has been completed. So they no longer tie up, but I'm explaining if you're trying to look at the differences, you can still follow. It's kind of like your key to decipher the changes. Is there a question?
In the, on the agenda bill, it's only 334. Or did you say 344?
345. Sorry. I'm a little
there's-
dyslexic, so I flip my numbers around.
There's only 334 pages.
In your packet? Hold on here.
Or am I not opening something?
Oh, I know. So I've done this before. If you're opening the agenda packet at the top, it'll give you all the way. There are a total of 515 pages in tonight's agenda packet, but that also includes what Amy had. If you just click on the agenda, which is the header on the left, and then clicked on critical areas, the numbering is off.
Okay.
So hold on. We're going to see if we can get there.
Well, in that packet, it's only 177.
So I did, though, I was smart. I listened to somebody who gave me some suggestions. At the bottom of the report, it should be just page 3. So if you're in the green document, this thing,
Yeah, okay.
page number 3 has a table. And that is your key to compare the two documents.
I'm sorry, I still don't see
Did you
it.
figure it out?
Yeah, so it'll be page 7 of 177? Are you? Still doesn't seem right. That's if you
Yeah,
clicked on
that-
that item.
There's a table there, yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's your key for if you wanted to compare the old code or the existing code with what we're proposing. The highlights I also wanted to point out, again, the best available science section, which is now section 2280040, that is brand new. The critical areas review, which is section 2280060, that is also brand new, and we're trying to be a little bit more helpful for the public, explaining how this works, when it's required, who has to pay for it, and so that section was also added. There's a new section called Previously Altered Critical Areas, section 22810, and this is there's a few ways that if you've already gone through a critical areas review but you didn't implement, this is somewhat helping you get through the process. If there was an illegal, actually the violations is a completely separate, but anyway, this I would encourage you to take a look at that because that is new. We are also recommending a new variance process. This is different than the reasonable measures, and this is really, I'll get to a later slide, but we are continuing trying to balance all of those growth management planning policies, and one of them is private property rights, economic development, housing, and so this is another tool that we see might help us while protecting our critical areas. And then getting down again to the critical aquifer, that's the next brand new section, and then everything else has been either updated or slightly refined. And next, we go, yeah, perfect, thank you. So again, whenever we're looking at code amendments, especially substantial ones like critical areas, we have to keep in mind the many things that we're trying to balance in the Growth Management Act, and this is just the header. And again, this is trying to protect our critical areas, but also be thoughtful of the other goals that we're trying to achieve. After we just adopted a brand new comprehensive plan that has given us a new housing allocation, population allocation, we're really trying to do economic development, and then remember private property rights. Before I do that, I just want to make sure there's nothing else. Oh, okay. And a couple more things on this slide I wanted to point out. So Kelsey, one thing that I would like to draw your attention to when you're reviewing, we had the conversation about selective removal of vegetation, and you had a concern about, I can't remember what, was it that, okay. So I did find several other codes that included chemical application. So when you're reviewing, if you could make sure you take a look at 2280.050 subsection K. The two sections that I added from our last conversation last year is one about controlling fire or fire prevention, and then the chemical application. The other two you already saw, that was trees and invasive like blackberries and such. And then Tony's not here, but I did want to bring all of your attention to section 228140. We did have a limited density transfer in the previous code. It's still in the new code. It's been revised though. Previously it had, you could exceed the minimum lot size. We don't use that. So I tried to update it to reflect how our code works, and the end result is still we're trying to transfer as much density as possible to areas on the property that are not impacted. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then why are we doing this? Protecting critical areas actually helps us out. Flooding is a really big one. Wetlands absorb a lot of water. They also pull pollutants out of stormwater as it's headed into our streams and our drinking water sources. And then it's also helping the ecosystem. And in Monroe, it is part of our motto, we are surrounded by nature. And so this is important to the city of Monroe. In addition to protecting the environment and all these other rules that we're trying to accomplish. Next slide. Okay, I know you're probably tired of hearing this from me, but I just wanted to remind everybody that the process I had gone through is using the Department of Commerce checklist for updating critical areas. I've spoken with staff members from the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Ecology. I have also been sending information to subject matter experts. I've also reached out to a couple jurisdictions that successfully got through their critical areas updates just for some tips and areas that they ran into and concerns. I drafted the proposed amendments, and then everything on Monday went to the Washington State Department of Commerce for their 60-day review. They sent it to all state agencies, and by Friday, I was also able to send it to our other interested parties, which include the master builders of King and Snohomish counties, oh my gosh, I just spaced on it. It's the Camano Snohomish Real Estate Group, and then we've also reached out to all of our tribal partners. And so now we're starting the process with the Planning Commission. And then just a side note, Amy and I will be at the Science in the Park on Saturday. We'll have a booth there trying to get the word out to our community, and I'll be working with Hannah to get a QR code on a flyer, and Hannah also helped me develop a webpage on the City of Monroe's website. So if you have interested parties, if you have property owners that are concerned, I would highly encourage them to go to that website. And then last slide is just the schedule. Again, tonight is really a very high overview. I want to make sure I give you plenty of time to read through all of this. It's a little bit dry. It can be a little bit confusing, very technical. So by next week or in 2 weeks, I'm hoping that you'll have had a time to digest the information and have questions and comments for me. And then if I'm able to answer all of them, I'm hoping that the Planning Commission can hold the public hearing on August 10th. And then on August 24th, if we don't have a whole lot of concerns raised, have the Planning Commission adopt the findings and prepare a recommendation for City Council. And then the City Council returns from their summer. They take the month of August off, so beginning in September, I can begin doing my review with them and hopefully have this adopted by the end of October or the first meeting in November. So with that, do you have any questions for me yet? Do you have any concerns, clarifications?
Do you have a handy list of the things that you had highlighted tonight for our attention?
I will follow up with an email. I have them
Okay.
in my slide notes, but I did not put a cheat sheet for it.
Okay, if that's not too much trouble,
Yeah,
that would
no,
be
no, no.
handy, then we can do our homework more properly, maybe.
Yeah, I should have
Or
thought
at
of
least
that.
I can do my homework more properly.
Sure. That's a great suggestion.
Any other questions?
Yes.
All right, Kelsey.
So specifically, we need, just compare those sections that are being changed, or comb all the way through this, through, in the lens of Monroe's mission statement?
Yeah.
Plus any other questions?
So I had this conversation with our city attorney last week, and I said the best place to start is read the report, because I really tried to break it down into user-friendly, this is what's changed. If you want to do an apples-to-apples comparison, that table I was talking about will show you this section used to be here, well now it's down here if you want to see a side-by-side comparison. But the real task is to go through the report and go through the new code, look at the definitions. There are a lot of resources as well that are available on the website, so I will also include that link when I send the email with the specific areas I'd really like you to pay attention to. And so you're looking at what we're required, and the Department of Commerce checklist, that's the other one, because that was the guide that I used to figure out where might we have gaps, where might we have inconsistencies, what are we missing, or gap, same thing. So I will try to provide a guide for you when I send out the email.
Okay, and that checklist is right here
Yeah.
on the last, or the first page, or the third page. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yes, Carla?
So everything on here or in this applies to both public and private property.
Yes, but you will read in the applicability, the exception, there are some caveats for utilities in particular, and they were in the code, and they are still in the code, but they are treated a little bit differently. So utilities only, that's not like City Hall, we can't be treated differently than across the street. There are some special provisions for utilities in particular. There were some things that were missing, like crossing streams for bridges, that is now in the code. And that is, I think it's in the applicability, or I will make sure I add that to you, but yes, everybody has to apply with, these rules apply to everybody. So, if, well, I don't know. We have a current situation. Yeah, in past situations. So somebody goes in and they have no idea that they're like 90% of their property is a wetland, and they decide, oh, I want a better view, or they're on a hill, they're on a steep slope, and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to take advantage, and they cut all the trees down. So we actually have an enforcement section. We had it previously. It's been built on a little bit. It provides more information, but you will have to do a critical areas report to determine what you did, and then you'll have to do a replacement. So if it's a wetland, you might have to do a replanting. Actually, that would be true potentially for a steep slope as well, because roots help keep soil on steep slopes. So, see, yeah, this is why I had this up and it did. It's in, before you get to the last two sections, before you get to wetlands, talk about enforcement and then the bonding requirements. So when a project is going in, you have to, you bond your project to ensure that the vegetation doesn't die. So those two sections, if you've gotten to wetlands, you've gone too far. How's that?
Yeah, I read that.
Okay.
I was just trying to figure, so if somebody's owned their property for 30 years or whatever, they have no idea, and they do something, it could be a political.
It could, yeah. Generally, we don't find out unless somebody says something. The other, I was trying to think, the other thing that comes about from time to time is aerial photos. We have them, I mean, we get updated aerial photos now twice a year for the city of Monroe at really high resolution. They've been doing that since, what, the 80s? It's been later than that. So new development, that's another time that you could see that happen, but part of their application would be, oh, we know we've got something on our property, and we already have maps online. Part of this update gives you a lot more resources. Snohomish County actually has a lot of information for critical areas within the city of Monroe. Department of Fish and Wildlife has some information, and so we're trying, these rules are much more robust than they used to be. Yeah.
Any additional questions? Nope. All right. Well, thank you so much for the presentation and for the homework. We have work to do this summer, and I love it. All right, we will move on to agenda item 7, which is discussion by commissioners and staff. And Mary, we will start with you.
Hi, everyone. Well, I don't know if anyone's attended the Music in the Park Friday. It was huge. It was fun. I saw people I hadn't seen for a while, but the best part was seeing new faces. So at least we're bringing in new people into Monroe, which is a great idea, a great thing. So if you haven't been, go. Friday night, it's family oriented. You can take your kids, take your lawn chair, enjoy. It was really fun. It's a great event that we have in July. Lake Tie. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the information tonight.
Nick?
I just want to thank you guys first off for preparing such a lovely presentations for us to kind of look over it and kind of give us a general idea of what we're going to be getting into here. And I just want to remind everyone, it's warm out, stay hydrated.
So Kate, I know that it's been something you've worked on for quite some time, so I'm sure you're glad to finally getting to the end here. So that's really good. It's been a lot, I know it's been a lot of work, and I mean, it is a lot of information, and it really takes a lot of brain power to kind of put it all together. So thank you for all that you're doing and pointing out the different things tonight. That'll be helpful a lot. So thanks for that.
Yep, thank you for the presentations, and that's all I have tonight. Eric?
Again, I do appreciate all of the information from the critical areas update, and looks like we will have lots of reading to do for the next 2 weeks, but you know you'll get questions from me.
Kelsey?
I'll mirror that, thank you, but this is nothing compared to the comprehensive plan. So I'm like really excited that it's only 177 pages. I don't have anything else, thanks.
Kate?
Actually, I do have one more thing back to critical areas. Look at the report, because I did make a decision looking at the scientific information available and other cities to not use the site potential tree height at 200 years. I chose to stick with a static number, but the minimum buffer for the two non-fish bearing seasonal and perennial streams, the minimum will go up to 100 feet, and that's the minimum based on shade, pollution control, sediment control. So I know that was one thing that we had talked about at a previous meeting. So that's that. And then the other one is there are no changes to the wetland buffer amounts or replacement ratios. There are no changes to that. So very important. Other than that, I have nothing new tonight.
Amy?
I don't really have much. I think the only thing I could say is that the next comp plan docket cycle, it's open right now, and it closes the end of July, the last working day of July. So any new comprehensive plan amendments need to be in by then. And then if we get any items on the docket, they will be coming your way, hopefully sooner than now, next year. That's all I have.
Hannah, and I have a question for you now that I'm thinking about it, since we don't have the monthly report for this one. A lot of community members are always asking about some of the same locations. Have there been any like pre-application meetings or interest meetings for the old Red Robin site or the old KFC site?
Yeah, I can provide updates for both of those. So a Mexican restaurant that's located in Everett called Avocados is currently going through the tenant improvement process for Red Robin. So we're going to have another Mexican restaurant in town, and it's really good food. And for KFC, Chipotle came in for a pre-application meeting there, but they have not submitted any applications so far.
Thank you. Do you have anything else?
No, just enjoying summer in our beautiful city.
All right, well, thank you. If there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting.